Have you ever been asked, what's the worst game you've ever played? For some, this is a simple question with an equally simple answer. For others, the query is a difficult one. It can take time to pull apart all the experiences you've had with something, to consider it truly terrible. So awful that one would be willing to place it upon a pedestal as the ultimate example, insisting that none should aspire to follow in its footsteps. It is no secret that video games are an interactive medium. It is a gateway to omit the ordinary and participate in the extraordinary, a means to engage with people, things, and ideas we've only ever dreamed of. And because of these virtual worlds we lose ourselves in, it is easy to grow emotional connections with fantasy that impacts our reality. So when asked the question prior, I feel it is important not to jump to conclusions, to deem something to be the worst, especially something that could carry so much emotional weight in someone's life, should be closely considered and evaluated. To do otherwise is not only unfair, but ignorant, potentially leading to a bandwagon effect that influences others to unjustly criticize something without really knowing why. Take for instance the subject of this study, Quest 64. Upon its release, it was nearly universally panned for its lack of story, repetitive, grindy gameplay, and sound. The occasional praise being for its graphics, innovative spellcasting system, and simplicity for new players of the RPG genre. Even today, many consider it to be the worst RPG on the N64, if not one of the worst games of all time. You can still find conversations going on in forums over the internet about how awful it is, and there are plenty of gamers making reviews and speedruns for the game that are more than happy to point out the game's many glaring issues. The videos I am uploading will be different from its predecessors. I'm going to give a comprehensive, informative dialogue on Quest 64, where I go over its lore, world, gameplay, development, and story, answering every lingering question along the way with whatever resources I'm able to find. I've scoured the internet for reviews, player commentary, and articles to compile common complaints, criticisms, and observations. My betters and contemporaries have legitimate evidence leveraged against the game's design, and there are certainly blatant cases of failed or rushed components that work against what could have been a more enjoyable experience. However, in my research, I've also heard or read comments on aspects of the game that are either misguided or simply untrue. The proof I'm putting forward on this occasion is ProJared's review of Quest 64. Let me begin by saying not only am I subscribed to Jared, but I legitimately enjoy his channel and work, and have for many years now. However, I am a firm believer in challenging ideas, even against those who you'd normally agree with or look to for guidance. If we can't put ourselves up against our betters, we'll never improve. In the game, the city of Dondrin is dependent on the digging of clay in a nearby forest for their craftsmen to make into pottery. This pottery is extremely important to the city's well-being, and serves as a prominent source of trade and income. One night, the castle is robbed of a precious jewel known as the Earth Orb, and the robber flees into the same forest the diggers use for collecting clay, making himself at home in an abandoned stronghold deep within the woods. Not only did the robber manage to steal the Earth Orb, but when the king sent his men after him, they were assaulted by the thief's black magic, many of them becoming wounded or overwhelmed by the man's power. Thus, the King's Orb was stolen. His soldiers are wounded and demoralized, and the forest his entire city's livelihood depends on is now too dangerous to enter because the thief made his base there, halting both the diggers and the potter's work in addition to preventing the city from trading or making its most valuable commodity. Additionally, we'll learn that passing through the area has been blocked off, keeping many travelers in limbo from returning to their respective provinces. This conflict isn't as simple as something's been stolen, go get it back. It's multi-layered. The pressure is on and there's a lot at stake here, not just for the king, but his people and his entire kingdom's prosperity. In the review, however, Jared makes a point that the Earth Orb is what the entire city depends on for success with its clay and pottery, which is incorrect.
So you make it to the city of Dondarin. The king there will say that their Earth magic orb was stolen by a terrible bandit. They used the orb's power to run their city, allowing them to craft pottery, plow the land, and the like. Without the Earth Orb, their city is doomed.
There isn't a single mention of the Earth Orb being some source of power for the city's craftsmen. And for a video berating the game for a lack of story, this is a huge oversight to have made that comes from no evidence. There's no mention to the details of how the orb was stolen, the fallout, or why the king hasn't sent his men after it since the theft. I understand this seems like a small issue to harp on, but this leads to him summarizing the rest of the plot involving the elemental gems as,
from here on out, you go to a new town and everything plays out the same. You go to Normoon, Darwin thing is missing! Kill the dude, you can keep it! Go to Larapool, our water thing is missing! Kill the dude, you can keep it! Go to Lineland, our fire thing is missing! You kill the dude, you can keep it! I really wish I could make fun of the plot, but honestly, there isn't any to make fun of.
There's much more going on here than that. And it's not just with Jared's video. This synopsis runs rampant in dozens of these reviews, all citing this game lacks story. Yet there is no indication that any honest attempt was made to learn exactly what was going on. Ultimately, this is just an example of one complaint I have out of many when it comes to Quest 64's public image. Allow me to ask you a question. If we're going to call something one of, if not the, worst RPG of all time, doesn't it deserve some integrity before that call is made? This type of misrepresentation has been ongoing since the game's release. It's a disservice to anyone that's enjoyed Quest, and equally to those that didn't enjoy it. Don't misunderstand, I'm not going to pamper this experience. Quest 64 has many, many issues that I have every intention on bringing to the viewer's attention. However, over the course of Quest's release, there have been many false accusations that have come from either rushed or careless reviews that I will focus on and dismantle, making the game's true faults the focus as evidence for its poor reception. No stone will remain unturned, and if there are questions that can't be answered, I'll be providing, at the minimum, plausible solutions or explaining why they can't be answered. So allow me to begin by outlining how this is going to be different from other reviews, what you can expect when watching these videos, and what questions I intend to answer. First, this is going to be less of a review and more of a thorough study. In fact, it will be the most comprehensive look at Quest 64 ever. There are already enough reviews and commentaries of Quest, and I don't intend to continue to saturate that market. I do intend to pull apart nearly every aspect of this game, to counter common complaints that are unjustified, or at the least, I feel are worthy of putting evidence up against. An example of this is the claim that Quest 64 lacks a story, which by now you know that I am vehemently against, as after playing through the game, I found more information than I could put together in a single video. In fact, there are several common misconceptions about the game that have been spread over time that I'll be taking apart and explaining as well. Second, what can you expect from watching these videos? I've outlined this study into several parts that will each have their own respective focus, where I script commentary along with gameplay, photos, or videos. These will be as follows: the game's development, the lore, the world, gameplay and design, story, and finally an epilogue. So ultimately, for those interested, this will essentially be one comprehensive look split into 6 parts, excluding this introduction. Finally, I intend to answer every question a player could have, or has had, before, during, or after their time with Quest. Common questions answered are: what's the story? Does the world have a background? What happened that led up to the game's starting point? What is this character doing here? Why does this area or item matter? What's good about Quest 64? What's the history of the game? What are the differences between this and the Japanese release? I plan to say that because of the depth of this study, there will be a huge spoiler warning, and I'd recommend not watching the videos if your intention is to one day play the game. But this isn't entirely true. I believe after watching these videos, playing Quest will be more enjoyable, as you'll be able to experience the game similarly to how I did, and perhaps the way it was always intended to be played. However, if you are still worried about spoilers, proceed with caution, for while I've done my best to keep them to a minimum in the lore and world videos, every other section contains massive spoilers. In conclusion, this will be a comprehensive, informative look at Quest 64, where I go over the elements of its development, lore, world, gameplay and design, and story, answering every lingering question along the way. It's important to go over these aspects because I feel game journalism at times must be more thorough, and Quest 64 hasn't been given an opportunity like this yet. On a personal level, I only wanted to talk about a game I cared about before it was too late, so I'm throwing my heart and soul into these productions. I both love and hate this game, and I want those who have ever played or had an interest in Quest 64 to go on this journey with me, to finally put a rest to the many mysteries behind the game.